Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar all about early years initial teacher training. It's fantastic to have you here. Whilst we're just letting everybody in, we do have a poll that you can take part in if you would like to. So I'm just going to launch that now, and there's a couple of questions you can answer if you'd like to. And we will make a start on the webinar in a couple of seconds. It's always really interesting to see where you're joining us from and whether you're working in a setting at the moment or perhaps you're a childminder joining us today. But we hope that by the end of the session, you're going to find out lots of the information that you need about the programme, and there'll be an opportunity to answer any questions when we get to the end. As we go through the presentation today, please do feel free to use the chat box that you can see at the bottom of your screen. Pop any questions in there, and there'll be lots of people from the team who are happy to help you out and answer your questions in there as we go along too. Okay, so this is going to be all about joining our cohort, which will be in September 2026 next year. So you're in the right place if you are really, really passionate about the early years. This is all about early years initial teacher training, which will give you early years teacher status at the end of the programme. So if you currently work in that birth to 5 age range, or that is your specialism, this is going to help you to become an expert in those very youngest age groups. It does enable you to also teach in reception class, in academies or in free schools. So that is an important difference that you do need to be aware of. It's not qualified teacher status or QTS. If you need QTS or you would want to be working in a school, do please consider, again, primary or secondary QTS, depending on which age group you want to work with. One of the main benefits of this status is that you can train for free. So it is fully funded by the Department for Education, and there are some differences across the routes, which I'll talk about shortly. But again, if you are employed in a setting at the moment, it also means you have the support of your employer whilst you're training to teach. It will enable you to get really up-to-date subject knowledge and learn all about best practice in the early years. Something it also really helps you to focus on and develop is your leadership skills. So we look at different things which will help with team development in your setting, and also how you can work closely with other professionals in the early years. But above all, this is the status that is going to help you to improve those outcomes for children and the families that you work with in your settings or you would like to work with in the future. So you might be thinking, why train with us, as in Best Practice Network? There are obviously lots of different providers who offer EYITT across the country. What I would say to you is we are the leading and we are the largest provider for EYITT. We have been running early years professional status and early years teacher training since 2007. So we were part of the very first trial with the DFE, and we are a very established programme. On top of that, we have a really high recommendation. So we have 98% of our current students who would recommend this programme to a friend or to a colleague. And my whole team are early years experts. So many of them still work in the early years sector and again have early years teacher status themselves. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the different routes. So there are different pathways that you might want to follow if you're interested in gaining your early years teacher status. The first one that you can see at the top of the screen is called our graduate entry route. And this is for any of you that are not employed in an early years setting. So this course is fully funded by the DFE, as I said earlier, so there's no cost for you to train, and dependent on your qualification, you may be entitled to up to £5,000 in bursary payments too. It does mean that the majority of your time on programme is going to be through placement. So you have to complete a minimum of 120 days placement across the course of the programme. And that's why we class that as our full-time training route. And you will be invited to different training sessions that are roughly each month that help to develop your practice along the way. Our second route is our graduate employment-based route, or GEB for short. So that's for any of you that are already employed in an early years setting. So you may be in a PVI setting, you may be in a school setting, in a nursery or in a reception class. So if you're employed in an early years post, this is the pathway for you. Again, it's fully funded by the DfE, so there's no cost to you in terms of your training. And a huge benefit here is that your employer will also receive £7,000 in an employer incentive payment. And that money is there to help them to support you whilst you're on programme. For example, when you need to go out on placement. Because you're working and you're training alongside your job, the placement requirement looks a little bit different. So typically that tends to be 25 days, usually in a school setting, if you're working in the early years already, and we'll have a look at the placement requirements in a bit more detail in a few minutes. Again, you'll be invited to those training sessions roughly every month, sometimes a little bit more. We're also really excited that we have launched this year our Childminder pathway. So we know what a fantastic job childminders do in the early years sector, and we really want to make sure that early years teacher status is open to childminders. There is a slight difference here because the funding is there from the DfE in terms of the training, so there's no training cost to you. Because of your status as a self-employed worker, unfortunately, there isn't the employer incentive money which is attached to this route. But we want to talk to you about the different ways that we can support this and how we've made it unique to your needs. So because we know your situation is slightly different and many of you may work on your own, and the placements may be something that you might think could be a challenge, we've highlighted here a few of the things that we will do to support you. So we will give you some support even before you get towards the interview. So that could be a telephone call, it could be a Teams call, and we'll talk you through those different aspects. For example, the funding, which I've just spoken about. When you are on programme, you'll be supported by our childminding lead, who is called Maxine Forrest, and we'll share her email in the chat box in case anybody wants to get in touch with her. But that really helps to tailor the programme specifically to you. We know that that looks different for childminders because you may have different numbers of children on programme. You may only, for example, in one cohort have children that are a certain age, and that will make it look different for you in terms of the placements that you need. It may be that, again, you're worried that you won't have a suitable mentor because you work on your own. So we have different things that we can put in place there, which will help you to ensure you have a mentor that will guide you through and support you whilst you're on programme. We also have a network which we've set up for childminders, so you can all come together. You can share that best practice, which is happening in your context. And again, we know it can be different in terms of the times of day that you're available to have those calls. So again, that will be worked out with each of you individually. You'll have a personal tutor, as all our students do on programme, but there are a few extra things that we put in place. For example, a communication log, which can help you when you're on your placements, for example, when you go into school. And it may be that things like the leadership look slightly different in your context too. So each step along the way, it is looking at how that looks different for you and how we can best support. We do have 12 childminders who are on the programme at the moment with us. So again, we are used to working with people who are in your situation. This is an example of the Padlets. So we have specific resources that are there to support childminders, but we love Padlets full stop in EYITT. So we have Padlets that are specific for each of the training days and also for different topics, which are available for everybody on the different pathways that I described at the beginning. So this is for everybody, regardless of which route you're on, there are certain things that look the same. So in terms of our training sessions, you have the choice. You can choose to come to a face-to-face event, which tend to be in the main cities across the country, or you might prefer to learn online, and you can have the option to join one of our virtual sessions with our facilitator team. We use an online platform, which is called Mosaic, and you can upload your work to there. And that enables your tutor and your mentor to give you that ongoing feedback whilst you're on program. We also have lots of fantastic resources on there, such as modules, videos, and enhancement sessions, which you can link into. I did mention a moment ago a personal tutor. So everybody has a personal tutor who will work with you from the beginning of the program all the way through to your final interview. So they're there to help you every step of the way. They'll be there on email, they'll be happy to join you on calls, and they'll also come out to see you in your setting and whilst you're on placement. We do also ask, if you're employed in a setting, that you identify somebody called a lead trainer. So that person is just there to work alongside my team and help to make sure you can attend your training days, you do get the study time that you need, and you're also able to go out on your placements as required. The mentor is a really important role, which again, we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But the key thing for that mentor is that it's somebody who is able to observe your teaching practice. They're able to sit back, observe you, and give some feedback each week in order to help you to improve. In terms of an individual plan, we always start with where you're at. So we have people joining the program who have really different experiences. We have people who may, for example, have worked in early years for 20 years. We might have people that have just started a job in early years and it's the very first time that they've worked in a setting. So it's very much about looking at what you know now, what your experience is, and making sure you've got the right level of support, but also the right level of challenge, which is going to make you the very best early years teacher that you can be. This diagram should help you to get a little bit of an idea of what it looks like whilst you're on program. So everybody will start in the induction phase on the left-hand side, and that's very much about getting you used to the program, being able to access the different systems that you need to know. For example, an IT induction there to help you with the platforms. And the BKSB that you can see there is just about us gaining a starting point in terms of your maths knowledge. But please don't let that put you off if maths is not your favourite subject. Again, you'll be supported to improve your skills all the way through the programme. You can see that across the 3 terms, there are some things that are the same. You'll always be coming to your training sessions with the facilitating team. You'll always be working on your learning sequences. The easiest way to describe the learning sequence is just the things you would do every day as an early years teacher. So it's working with a child or a group of children, it's planning some interesting activities, it's assessing how those children are doing, and it's looking at what difference that has made to their learning and to your teaching. At the end of every half term, as you can see, we also have a review. And in that review, you come along with your tutor and your mentor, and we have a look at all the different things that you've been doing. We use that as a really good opportunity to benchmark your progress and to set some targets which will help you to move forward. As we get to the very end of the programme, we go into our recommendation period, And at that point, that's when we make a summative assessment against the early years teacher standards. Even when you have got your early years teacher status, we also set up a transition plan. And that's to make sure that you're really well supported in your first year as an early years teacher. You can see at the bottom there that the whole way through, again, you've got your tutor coming out to visit you. So they come to see you at least 5 times across the programme. Sometimes it's more, depending on what you feel you need. This is our curriculum map, so it's good for you to have a little sneaky peek at what kind of things we'll be focusing on whilst we're on programme. You can see around the outside that those are our core curriculum themes, and they really underpin everything that we do on EYITT. So you'll become really, really familiar with those different aspects. And the pink segments that you can see on the inner circle are some of the key topics that we focus on. It's obviously really important that you've got a really deep understanding of the early years foundation stage, but it's also important that you understand how those expectations progress into national curriculum. So we look at things like the continuum of learning. It's obviously really important that you understand how to adapt your teaching. So in that adaptive teaching segment, which again is woven throughout, we'll be looking at lots of different ways in which we can support children with special educational needs and/or a disability, and how we can adapt and make adjustments as necessary. This will give you a nice little overview of the training days and what kind of things we focus on. So just to pick out a few, starting strong that you can see there on day 3 is all about best practice for under 3s. So a really strong focus on attachment theory, working with babies, what it's like to work with toddlers, what are the key areas we need to focus on, what are the strategies that support best practice in those age groups. If we look at something like Foundations for Success on day 4, that's where we have a really closer focus on early mathematics and also communication and how that develops into the teaching of phonics. For anybody on the call who is thinking about taking the graduate entry route, so you're not employed in a setting at the moment, we also offer some additional workshops on top of those core curriculum days that we've just looked at. So you can see in the first term, before we get to Christmas, you've got some extra opportunities to work through some of the modules that we have on Mosaic. And that really helps to ensure that you're in a really strong position before you go on your placement and you've got all that key knowledge that you need. So as you can see, a strong focus on safeguarding, understanding what kind of professional behaviours we need as a teacher, and again, understanding how to adapt that teaching dependent on the children that you're working with. These workshops again continue into term 2, and because they're just for the GEs, again, that's a really nice opportunity for any graduate entry students to come together and to have their own network, to talk about what it feels like going on placement for the first time, to think about what that looks like when we're trying to pull all the evidence together, which happens around May time, as you can see there. So it's really, really supportive for anybody who is thinking about that route. Just to have a little bit of a closer focus on the mentoring, because we do tend to get lots of questions around who could that mentor be? Or maybe you're thinking, I don't think I have anybody who's suitable in my setting at the moment. It is about thinking, who is that expert colleague? We need that mentor to be somebody who is really going to help to develop you as a teacher. So somebody who's got a really good grounding in early years theory and knowledge themselves, lots of experience as an early years teacher to help to have those discussions and help to move you forward in your teaching. It is about them sharing their expertise and their skills. So it may be that you're really interested in special educational needs, and it may be that your mentor is the Senko in your setting, and they'll really be able to support you and help you with those discussions. It is important that that person can observe you every week and give you some feedback. And we really need them to be able to set you smart targets, which again are going to help you to progress towards those early years teacher standards. They are also there as a support for you all the way through in terms of having the right amount of time in the different age groups and helping you with your workload. Now, it may be that you're thinking, again, I'm not sure who that would be. We can help you to look at that and identify which staff you've got in your setting. It may be that you don't have anybody that you feel has those skills because they've never mentored a student before. We do have a full mentor team and a mentor offer. So anybody who takes up that role is going to be fully supported by us in terms of training, induction, and what they need to do in that role. We do also have the opportunity to offer some flexible mentoring. So that means somebody from my team will be able to support talking through the observations and helping in that way. So please don't let the mentor be a barrier. Please just get in touch and we can look at what those opportunities are. Placements are something that we tend to get lots and lots of questions about. And the reason for this is it'll look really, really different for everybody who's on the call today. The best way to look at this is what are the things that are the same for everybody? What do we absolutely have to do? So everybody who takes their early years teacher training has got to cover the age groups from 0 to 5. And that's a minimum requirement, which is set by the DFE. Everybody, again, regardless of the route you're on, has to complete a placement of at least 25 days. Now, typically, that tends to be the school placement if you're already working in an early years setting. So that tends to be 20 days in reception class and 5 days in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. However, as an example, that might look different if you're already working in a school. So you might be based in reception class, and that's where you are all the time. Therefore, your 25-day placement is going to be in the early years, and you're going to spend that time across babies, toddlers, and preschool. Placements for childminders, again, will look different because that's going to depend what children you have on roll in your setting. So, for example, you might have babies, toddlers, and preschool age children in your cohort at the moment. If you do, that means that you can cover the majority of your sequences in your home setting, and you might just need your school placement. If you don't, or if you have quite small numbers, it might be that you need to get that larger group experience by being in a PVI nursery setting. So for placement requirements, there are some things that have to stay the same, but what we'll do is we'll look at each individual situation with your personal tutor when you're successful at having a place on programme. Again, for the GE students, you've got to complete those 120 days. So we do say for that, we ask that you can commit at least 4 days a week because that enables us to set those placements out, but also give you a break in between your placement blocks. And we do have a placement team that can help you to support all and find all those different placements so that you get to cover those different age groups. We do need to make sure with the placements for everybody that they give you that real variety and that real depth across the different age groups. And sometimes we have people that are interested in particular settings. For example, you might want to find out more about outdoor learning and you'd really love to go and do your placement in a forest school. So again, we can talk to you about the settings that we already have partnerships with and try and make sure you get that real variety in your experience. As we can see here, One of the key things, which again is a DFE requirement, is that everybody covers those age groups in at least 2 settings. For most people, that means that your home setting or your employed setting is setting 1, and you need to have a setting outside of that. The setting that sits outside of your own has got to be graded good or outstanding with Ofsted to ensure that you're seeing really high quality teaching, and that's what you're learning from and that's what you're observing. As it says here, there could be those certain situations where people actually need 3 placements. The easiest example to give to that would be somebody who's working in a preschool. So you're working in a preschool setting at the moment. That would mean you need your school placement, but you also need some time in babies and toddlers. So we would help to support you in finding those 2 placements. And for all of the placements, as it says at the bottom, it's really important that they are settings that are following the EYFS so that we can hit the key criteria or working towards national curriculum expectations. Thinking about when you get to the end of the program, which probably feels a long way off now, but I can guarantee it goes really quickly when you're enjoying yourself so much and you're learning things all the time. It's very, very formative as we go through the program. So we tend to use the observations that your personal tutors and mentors are completing, as well as the work that you're submitting. So we'll ask you to reflect on your training days, or we'll see what your progress is like against your targets. It's only right at the end of the program, in that recommendation period, that we make a summative judgment. That's that summative judgment against the early years teacher standards. And when we get to that point, we then go forward towards our exam board, and hopefully you're successful in your recommendation for early years teacher status. So I hope that's given you lots of things to think about and lots of information about the programme and about the different routes. There are certain things that you have to have in terms of an entry criteria in order to be eligible to do your early years initial teacher training. So as we can see here, you do have to have a degree or an equivalent level 6. So for example, if you have an international qualification, we can make sure that that is comparable by following the ENIC process and seeing whether or not that is seen as a suitable level 6 in the UK. So again, the team can help to guide you through that process if you're in that situation. It doesn't have to be a degree in early years or teaching. It can be a degree in anything. You may be sat here and you've got a bachelor's degree in photography or a bachelor's degree in law. All of those are fine. You do need to have your GCSE for English, maths and science, and that is at a grade C on the old grading system, or it's a grade 4 or above on the new grading system. Again, it can be a recognised equivalent. So you may have another qualification that you feel or you know is equivalent to a GCSE. Again, for anybody who's not sure about that or who has any queries, the best thing to do is to email the team. So we'll make sure that you've got the email at the end of this call, and we can check your certificates and we can get back with you to say, yes, that's fine, or actually, this is the next step that you need to take. Everybody does need to have the right to study and work in the UK, and we do need to check that you have a level of competence in terms of your spoken and your written English. Because, of course, we will be working very closely with children. For those of you that are not employed in a setting, we do need to make sure that we do an enhanced DBS check to make sure that you're suitable and safe. And for everybody, we also need to check that you are physically well and you're fit and healthy. And one of the ways we do that is by asking you to complete a short medical questionnaire. That means that we've got, again, all the information we need to be able to support you. For example, you might need a reasonable adjustment, or there might be something we can put in place to help. If anybody is particularly thinking it's the GCSEs which are going to stop you to apply, there are lots of different ways that you can go about this. But something we tend to find is really popular is to take an equivalency test in the subject that you're missing. So if you're missing your maths, English, science, or all of them, you can take an equivalency test, which would help you to be able to start on program. You can see here that we tend to get lots of equivalency tests through A-star equivalency. Because of that, we do have a discount code, which we can share with you if you're in that situation. But it's equally your choice, and you can use any equivalency provider if you're in that situation. Again, if you want any help on that and you're not sure, please use the email again from the team and we can help you to be ready for next September. If it's maths that you're missing, it's really fantastic that we can offer you this for free. So there isn't a cost. We use BKSB, which I mentioned before, we use for our subject knowledge in maths. And you can take a short test on there, which will enable you to start on program with us. The only thing to be aware of here is that is for the purpose of getting on our program. It doesn't necessarily mean that that would be valid if you went, for example, to apply with a different ITT provider. But again, if you're in that situation and it's maths that you need help with, then please do let us know. So in terms of your next step after today, you can see we've got our website on there, bestpracticenet.co.uk/EYITT. There is a huge amount of information on there, so it would be great for you to go on there and have a look. There are things like guides, information, videos. You can see some of the people who've won awards on the programme. For example, on National Early Years Teacher Day, you'll be able to find lots of answers to questions that you might have in the frequently asked questions section too. And if there are any childminders on the call today, I would urge you to check out our new Childminder page. Again, you'll see some of the things that I've talked through today in terms of how we can help to support you. Any questions that you've got after today, EYITT at bestpracticenet.co.uk is definitely the email for you. If it's a childminder specific query, Maxine Forrest is our lead for any questions on childminding. And I'm hoping that somebody in the team has popped that in for you already. And obviously you can see there are some of our social media handles that are there at the bottom. So I'm just going to open it up now for a few questions that we might have. I'm going to have a little look in the chat box. I can see that Freya has popped in there, Maxine's email, and also the Childminder webpage, which I've just spoken about, which is fantastic. Freya, is there any questions that you feel we need to answer, or does everybody seem quite happy?
Yes, there's a few in the Q&A part of it. So
Okay.
one of them was, do you still qualify if you already hold QTS?
You absolutely do still qualify. That's a fantastic position to be in. So if you've already got your qualified teacher status, but you really want to get that recognition for your work in the early years, then yes, it's absolutely great for you to apply and do your early years teacher status. We've had lots of people on the programme before with both primary and secondary QTS. So I think that puts you in a really strong position. Are there any other, Freya, that you would like me to answer?
Yes. Somebody has said, if after the course you decide you want to be a teacher in a primary school, is it possible to just do the short QTS course and work in a school?
Yes. So again, if you do your early years teacher status, the early years teacher standards are really similar to the teaching standards that you get for primary and secondary. So there's a few different ways really that you can go about that if you want to then progress onto your QTS. And I would say it depends again which role you want to go in, which age group you want to kind of specialize in. So at Best Practice Network, we do offer different routes. For example, if it's primary that you're thinking about, we have the different age phases for primary. We also have a SEND specific route for primary, and we also offer different subjects for the secondary route. There are, again, other ways you can do that. There is assessment only routes, which are offered to QTS. You'd have to look at those again with different providers to see exactly what they're asking for in terms of eligibility. But again, if you want to send a question into the team at that point, we can kind of provide you with some extra information.
We also have somebody asking if is there help available in finding placement settings in the GEB route?
Absolutely. So we do tend to use our placement team mainly for the GEs, so for people that are not employed in settings. But if you're a GEB, we would say to you, first and foremost, have a look at obviously any settings in your local area. Any transition links that you have, for example, with primary schools. So we'd always ask you, first of all, do you have any settings locally that you're interested in? We can help you to reach out and get in touch with them. But because we have so many GEB students on the program every year, all of our tutors have lots of links with schools across the country. So we are always there to say, have you tried this one? Would you like me to contact this school for you? And if needed, we will get our placement team to support. But what I can say to that is we have a huge amount of people on program at the moment, and everybody is successfully on placement. So it's 100% something that we can help you with.
Perfect. We also have somebody asking when do the ta placements take place?
Okay, so in terms of when the placements happen, that again is quite different to each individual. We would always say it would be beneficial to go kind of between January to Easter. The reason I say that is we'd like you to probably have your first term just settling into program because many of you will be doing the program alongside working. So give yourself to that opportunity and that time to get to grips with everything that's new. Practice some of those things in the setting, in your home setting, and then go out to school or go out on placement and then return back to your home setting. But again, it's very individual. It may be that your settings say to you, the best time for you to go on placement is November. If that's the case, because it's a quieter period, then you absolutely can do that. So there isn't a set time frame. Your tutor will work with you to say what works best for you.
We also have Elizabeth asking, do you have to do a maths assessment if you can supply GCSE certificates?
Yes. So even if you have your maths GCSE, the BKSB helps us to meet another requirement from the DFE, which is about everybody upskilling in their literacy and mathematics skills. So the way that that works is you do a little diagnostic at the beginning of the program, and that may show that you are still working at level 4-5, similar to your GCSE. What we will then do is we'll look at which area do you perhaps need a little bit of support in. So it might be, for example, that you struggled a little bit more on the ratio questions. Your tutor will then set you a target around ratios, and you will just demonstrate across the course of the program that you've upskilled in that area. So it's not all areas. Again, it's individual to what that diagnostic tells us.
We've also had quite a few people asking on the intake dates and when that would
Yep.
be.
Okay, so our next intake is going to be September 2026. I can see a couple of people have asked about a spring intake. We don't have a spring intake taking this starting in January or February. That is because we are completely full. So we filled our allocation from the DFE. Therefore, we have to use next year's, which means we'll have a really large cohort starting in September. So for anybody who's keen to apply, please get your application in as soon as possible, which means that we can ensure that you get one of those places. Because once they're gone, once they're full, obviously we don't have any other spaces to give out.
We also have Helen asking how many hours study per week are needed.
Okay, so we would roughly say your study time is 10% of your working hours. So it's the same requirement for anybody who's doing teacher training, whether that's early years, primary or secondary, same as it would be for a qualified teacher on their PPA time or planning, preparation and assessment time. You're not supposed to teach for more than 90% of your timetable. So it's 10% of your working hours, which again might look different depending on whether you are full-time or part-time. So it's a percentage of those hours. It can look different again depending on your setting. So, for example, your setting might say, it's quite difficult for me to give you that study time each week. And therefore, they might save that time up and give you a longer block of time each month or every 2 weeks. So, again, there is some flexibility with that, depending on what's happening in your own setting.
We also have a question saying, could you take the employed route working as a SEN teacher?
So that would depend whether or not you're working in a specialist send provision. So we do have to make sure, again, one of the requirements around your setting in order to be eligible is that your setting is following the EYFS. So it might depend on your role and on your setting. So whoever it is who's got that question, if you would be happy to email into the team and provide for me your setting name or address, I can have a look at the setting. If you describe to me what your role is, then I can see whether or not it's eligible. Again, hopefully it will be, and it might just be the case that you might need to do an extra placement, depending on what type of provision you are in.
Right. We also have Poppy. She is already employed in a setting, but working part-time. So is there a minimum number of hours you would have to work to complete the course?
Yep, that's a really good question. So it's a minimum of 16 and a half hours a week that you need to be employed for in order to be eligible for the program. So hopefully that is the case. If it isn't, and obviously your setting are supportive of you gaining the status, because obviously there'll be benefits for them in terms of you developing your knowledge, etc., and ratios, it may be that you can kind of negotiate a slight increase in your hours if that's possible.
And then I have a placement question. It is, if I am working in early years setting, do I still need to do placement in the baby section?
So it would depend again on what type of early years setting you're in and which age groups you cover. So if you're in an early years setting which covers 0 to 4, then no, you don't need to do an additional baby placement. You just need to do your school setting.
We also have one about the G. As we
Yeah.
said, it can be face to face or online. So then the placement is compulsory and it should be 4 times in a week.
Yes. So for the training sessions, it can be face to face or online. In terms of the placement is compulsory because that's a DFE requirement. So you have to spend time in each of the age groups, which are babies, toddlers, preschool, reception in school, and Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. The reason we say it needs to be 4 days a week is because you've got the 120 days requirement to hit, which again is a requirement from the DFE. It enables us to make sure that you get a good period of time working with the same group of children, the same parents, and the same staff team. So it enables you to gather better evidence in terms of how those children are progressing, the routine of the setting or the school. And it also enables you to have a break because what we wouldn't want to do is for you to be out on placement continuously. So, from a well-being and a workload perspective, it's better if we can have blocks of time where you're on placement and then blocks of time where you're not on placement and you've got the opportunity to write up your work, look at the assessment, or access training days or materials.
We also have quite a lot of questions about how to apply. So I will put the apply link in the chat just for all of you. But yeah, it is not through the DfE website, it is directly through us. Let me
Yep,
find
that is a little bit different. For the other routes like primary and secondary, it does tend to come via that train to teach and via the DfE. But no, for EYITT, it comes to us directly, as Freya said. I'll pop the slide back as well so that people can see the website link. When you go onto the website and you're on our page, you will see there is a little button which says apply now. Again, if anybody struggles or needs any help with their application, then again, use the EYITT at email and everybody will be happy to help you.
We also have someone asking, will the study time be at home online?
So your study time, again, it depends when your study time is happening. So if you are on the employed route and you're in your nursery setting or your school setting, that study time is really for you to agree with your employer and with your personal tutor. So again, that can look different. Some employers will say, okay, you've got 2 hours on this day, and you can go up to that quiet room and you can use the laptop and you can work from the setting. So you're still on site just in case they needed your support. There are some other settings or employers which may say, I'm happy for you to take that time at home. So it's very much having that conversation and seeing what is mutually agreeable. In terms of placement, when you're on school, again, I would say that tends to be on the school site. So it would tend to be at a time, as the teachers would, that you may go and work in the staff room or you may go and work in an office for a set amount of time. And that would enable you again to perhaps be, accessing school systems, photocopying, having conversations with other professionals. So that wouldn't tend to be at home whilst you're on placement.
We also have quite a few kind of specific questions. What I've just
Okay.
done is I've just put our email into the chat. I would say email us it in, and then we can give you a more direct answer to your questions. Let me try and see what other questions there are. So we have Harry asking if are there different days for the training each term? Say I can't attend one of the training days, would there be another one covering the same topic on another day?
Yes, absolutely. So we tend to run the training days across a few weeks. So, as I said, we have them face to face and we have them online. We do always run them on the same day for your group. So, for example, if you were placed in the Leeds group, it would be that those training days would always be on a Tuesday. They would always be with the same people and also with the same facilitator. That works the same way for online. You may be in online 5 group, and again, you may always be on a Wednesday as we go through the program. If for any reason you can't attend your standard group, it's just a case of letting the team know, letting your tutor know, and we would put you in the next available group. We do also record all of our online sessions. So if anybody ends up missing one because you're poorly or something happens in setting and you can't attend, you'll always have those recordings available to watch in your own time as well.
But I have someone asking, is the EYTS internationally recognised? Are there any students that have been able to use the qualification abroad?
That's one that I think I would have to get back to you on. We definitely have had lots of students that have gone abroad and have taken up positions. And I know that because a lot of them have come to us, for example, and asked for a transcript or something again, which shows what sort of level it's at. It is a level 6 qualification, early years teacher status. So again, I think it's quite dependent on the individual country and again what they're looking for. So that would be one worthwhile looking into in more detail. I can see I'll take down, I think that I've got the name, so I will respond to you about that one.
We've also got Kerry Ann asking, how long are the assessments? Are there a few longer assessments or lots of shorter ones?
Yeah, so in terms of assessment, it's very formative, as I said. So The main way we assess is through the learning sequences that I talked about. So you will be working on a learning sequence in each of the age groups that you work in. So, for example, if you were spending time in the baby room, you would do a set of 5 or 6 learning activities. So, you'd plan for those activities. If you were focusing, for example, on personal, social, and emotional development, you'd evidence some reading that you'd done around that area. You would also assess the children so that we can show that they've made progress. And then you would reflect on your learning at the end, and that's your complete sequence. So we tend to say each sequence probably takes at least 2 weeks in terms of your delivery. It could be longer in terms of the reading and research that you're doing or the reflection you're doing in that area. Um, so you have 5 learning sequences to do, which are again across the course of the program, whilst you're working in those different age groups. And then we also have one written assessment. So we call that our reflective account, and that is more of a academic, excuse me, academic piece where you answer a question around your leadership and your professional responsibilities and you link research into it. That's around about April time in the program. And before that comes, we have lots of workshops and we have input on the training day to help you have the skills that you need in order to write that account. So there's a few different ways really that we assess. Um, but again, they are spread out across the course of the program. So you're only ever working on one thing at a time. For example, in the first term, once you're on program and you start in the September, your first learning sequence is normally due around the 1st of November. So that's your main focus in terms of your assessment to begin with. When you've produced that first sequence and you've got feedback from your tutor, you'll then start working on your second sequence, and they're paced as we go through the program, apart from that reflective account in April. And again, they're all positioned in between your training days. So your training days will help you with the knowledge that you need for each of those.
I would say most of the questions remaining have already been covered, or
Yep.
there is a new one. Is there any support for someone with dyslexia actually?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, as part of the team, we have a support team. Anybody with any additional learning needs, anybody with any well-being needs, the team are there to help you. So what we would do in that instant is meet with you, ask you what kind of support you feel you need. It may be that you've got an official diagnosis. So again, we can look at strategies to support you, put a support plan in place. We have different resources that we can share with you. And again, your personal tutor will help you with each of those different assessments. So again, we have lots of people on program who are in that same situation, who are all doing extremely well. So absolutely, lots of support is available for you.
I have also had someone ask if they will need to write any essays during the process.
So just the one that I've just mentioned, it's just the reflective account in April time. That's marked against the level 6 writing criteria. Within the learning sequences, you do have to be able to write up your teaching and learning plans, and you do need to be able to reflect on the reading and the research that you've done. But again, for each of those elements, you'll be guided through that process, and we have some examples. So you can have a look at ones that have already been completed to help you to get onto the right track.
Perfect. Yeah, I would say that is all the questions, unless you see any others that you think that are good to answer. I do think most of them have been covered, or they're quite specific and kind of need to be emailed in.
Yep. There's a couple about the interview. So, just to put everybody at ease in terms of the interview, it will be somebody from my team, again, who works on the program. So, they're all very early years based. And what we really want to do is get to know you, find out about where you're working, what your experience is, why you want to become an early years teacher. One of the key things is that you are asked to prepare a short presentation, which is about play. So obviously, if you're in the early years, we all know how important play is. And then there's a set of questions. So again, please don't let that put you off. It is a conversation just with somebody in the team who wants you to succeed. You know, we want people who are wanting to gain this status and become an early years teacher. So please do take that first step and get your application in. And it would be lovely to see lots of you coming through to the interviews. I think hopefully that's been helpful for people. There are lots of specific and individual questions, like Freya said. So please do use the email that you can see on the slide. Get in touch with us, and we will make sure we get back to each of you to answer your questions. And I really, really hope that I get to see some of you on the programme next September. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to join tonight, and I hope you have a lovely evening.